Andrew Yang has been off the national stage since he ended his 2020 presidential bid, but he is using his voice to sound the alarm about these disturbing cases against Asian Americans.
Andrew, of course, I want to first start off with the most important people in your home, your kid.
Well, I've been on the road for the last couple of years, and so I'm just so grateful to my wife, Evelyn, who's been the rock of our family. She's been the CEO of Team Christopher, which is the name of our 7-year-old, and he is getting homeschooled, but obviously screens and online are not the same as in person. And so we're doing everything we can to surround him and his brother with enough to do. I will confess that to the extent we had any screen time limits in our house, they've kind of gone out the window because at this point.
You're like, here, watch whatever you want to watch. How is that, since you've been on the road campaigning and working before campaigning away from home? How is it to be there, even during this crisis, to have this kind of time with them?
Oh, Evelyn and I were talking about it just last night, where this is in some ways a real special time because you bond with your family more so than usual. We actually are sleeping with them all in the same room, because like the little boys wanted to sleep with mommy. And so it's been really cozy in some really positive ways. And for me personally, it feels like I'm making up for lost time because I've been on the road for the last couple of years.
You wrote a very personal op-ed about the number of acts of hate and acts of violence directed toward Asian Americans in this country since this pandemic. I remember, Andrew, right before we were off air, when we were still in our studio, and we talked about how cab drivers no longer wanted to stop in Chinatown to pick up customers because they feared they would get the virus. That behavior only escalated, and it's turned into acts of violence now. You were personally impacted by this.
I think every Asian American has been personally impacted, at least in some way, because the fear and the racism, frankly, has just surged where Asian Americans are concerned. We have now over 1,000 assaults that have been reported. And you know that for every one that's been reported, there are many others that we'll never hear about. So it's a really tough time for all Americans, but I will say that I think Asian Americans have an extra phenomenon tied in where not only are we trapped at homes, but when we do go out for groceries, people in some ways blame us for the virus, which obviously is completely wrong and just a ridiculous idea.
There was a moment that pushed you to the edge. What was that moment that pushed you to write that op-ed?
I was on the phone with the CEO of the crisis text line, and she told me that the proportion of Asian Americans that use the crisis text line surged from 5%, which is normal, about what we are as in terms of the American population, to 13% post-crisis, which is a sign just of how much anxiety and fear there is in the Asian American community. So that was one thing that spurred me to write the op-ed. The other was going to the grocery store and having people cast accusatory looks in my direction. And I will say that wearing a mask, in my case, it makes me all the more anonymous because, now, frankly, like some people recognize me just walking around, but if you have a mask on, then they obviously don't. So I felt the accusation, frankly, or the fear or the anxiety on the part of others just walking to a grocery store.
It's so true. I was thinking about what you wrote, your experience from hearing from people here in the States. But then in China, there are reports, the Washington Post and others did story, the numbers of cases of violence directed against Africans in China, all based on fear and ignorance. What is so, I think, worrisome for me, Andrew, as a mother, you are a father, what will we tell our children about this, about, to your earlier point, who we are in these incidents?
In a time of crisis, your true character gets revealed, and the challenge for us is to make it so that positive things are revealed and that we're able to come together, help each other, not give in to fear, racism, and hatred. And it's a worldwide phenomenon. Unfortunately, when you feel like your future is insecure, then some negative impulses come to the fore very quickly, and that's what we have to try and overcome together.